The wind never really stops at Yellowstone, not in the way you'd expect wind to stop somewhere, taking a breath, pausing before the next gust. Here it moves like something that lives inside the landscape, threading through the lodgepole pines, dropping into thermal basins, rising off geothermal surfaces where the earth itself breathes upward. It is a sound you don't forget. Travelers who've passed through Yellowstone once, 30 years ago, still remember it. Not the geysers, not the bison on the road, the wind. And underneath the wind, silence. There are places in Yellowstone National Park where the silence is so complete, so architecturally precise, that your own heartbeat sounds wrong, like a trespasser, like something that doesn't belong there. 63 people have been reported missing in Yellowstone since official records began. That's the number, 63. The Park Service will confirm the number if you ask the right way to the right ranger on the right day. What they will not confirm, what they have been instructed at various points across 6 decades not to discuss, is how many of those 63 were never explained. Not just unsolved, not simply cold, unexplained in ways that made experienced investigators lower their voices, change the subject, retire early. This is not a story about those 63. This is a story about the ones that didn't make the list, because the number 63 assumes something important, that a disappearance was reported, that someone noticed, that the paperwork was filed, the family was called, the search was initiated. Yellowstone draws 3 million visitors a year across its 2 million plus acres. It employs hundreds of seasonal rangers, maintains dozens of backcountry patrol zones, and operates under a federal mandate for visitor safety. And yet, in the archived internal communications of the Yellowstone Ranger Division, documents obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests spanning nearly a decade, there are references, irregular and scattered but persistent, to cases that moved through the system in a different way, cases that were handled quietly, cases where the instruction from above was not investigate, but document and hold, cases that were given a designation, informal and never officially codified, that rangers in the field called simply a hold file. A hold file did not mean no investigation occurred. It meant the investigation's conclusions were not to be shared, not with the press, not with the family, beyond a minimum required notification, not with other rangers, unless they were directly involved, and certainly not with the public. What follows is a reconstruction, built from ranger testimony, some on record, some anonymous, all corroborated against available documentation. From FOIA released incident reports with redactions that tell their own story, from families who waited, from the landscape itself, which holds information the way deep rock holds heat, slowly, permanently, and at enormous pressure. Some of what you are about to hear has never been publicly reported. Some of it has been reported and quietly forgotten, swallowed by the noise of a news cycle that doesn't pause for wilderness. All of it happened in a place that looks, on a clear summer morning with Old Faithful sending its column of steam into the blue Wyoming sky, like the most beautiful and orderly landscape in the American West, looks. To understand why disappearances at Yellowstone carry a different weight than disappearances elsewhere, you have to understand what Yellowstone actually is. Most visitors understand it as a national park, the first national park, established by President Ulysses S. Grant in 1872, covering portions of Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. They understand it as a place of geysers and hot springs, grizzly bears and wolves, summer crowds and winter silence. That understanding is accurate as far as it goes. It doesn't go very far. Yellowstone sits atop one of the largest active supervolcanic systems on the planet. The Yellowstone caldera, a volcanic crater roughly 34 miles by 45 miles, was formed by a cataclysmic eruption approximately 640,000 years ago. The magma chamber that caused that eruption has never fully cooled. It sits beneath the surface, a reservoir of partially molten rock at temperatures that would liquefy most metals, driving the geothermal activity that makes Yellowstone what it is. The geysers, the hot springs, the fumaroles, the boiling mud pots, all of it is the surface expression of a geological system of almost incomprehensible scale and energy. This is relevant to the disappearances for reasons that are not mystical, they are practical. Yellowstone's hydrothermal features are among the most chemically aggressive environments on Earth. The Grand Prismatic Spring, the most photographed feature in the park, reaches temperatures of 189 degrees Fahrenheit in its center. The Morning Glory Pool has recorded pH levels approaching 0, more acidic than battery acid. The Norris Geyser Basin contains superheated water at temperatures exceeding 250 degrees Fahrenheit just feet below the surface. Rangers who have worked the thermal basins will tell you, with a matter-of-factness that takes years of desensitization to develop, that a human body entering one of the higher temperature acidic springs can be substantially dissolved within hours, not damaged, dissolved. In June of 2016, a young man from Portland named Colin Nathaniel Scott left the boardwalk at Norris Geyser Basin and walked approximately 225 yards off trail. He fell into a hydrothermal pool. Rescue personnel were unable to recover his body. The official report notes that by the time divers could have safely accessed the site, conditions had made recovery impossible. The park confirmed the incident. What the park did not publicize, what a ranger who was present that day described to an independent journalist in 2019, speaking on condition of anonymity, was that the retrieval team found, at the edge of the pool, a single sneaker and a watch. Not the rest of the clothing, not the phone, just a sneaker and a watch, as if something had selected those two items and placed them at the water's edge. The ranger knew there was a physical explanation. Water temperature and chemical composition create unpredictable behavior in submerged materials. Things float, things sink, things are carried by convection currents. He knew all of this. He told the journalist he repeated it to himself on the drive back. And then he said, "But I've been doing this for 19 years, and I've never seen a sneaker positioned like that. Not displaced, not washed up, placed." He asked not to be named. He is the first of many. The geography of Yellowstone compounds everything. The park's 2 million plus acres contain terrain that ranges from easily traveled boardwalk and maintained trail to remote backcountry that sees fewer than 20 human visitors in an entire year. The Thorofare region, in the southeastern corner of the park, is considered the most remote non-Arctic wilderness in the lower 48 United States. The nearest road is 32 miles away in any direction. Search and rescue operations in the Thorofare require either multi-day horseback approaches or helicopter insertion, the latter made unreliable by the region's notorious and sudden weather changes. It is in the Thorofare and the adjacent Bridger-Teton wilderness that 3 of the hold file cases originated. But before we get to those, before we enter the deep backcountry, we need to start where the most inexplicable cases started, in the accessible areas, on the roads and maintained trails that millions of people walk every year, in the middle of everything, where disappearing should be impossible. Margaret Hollis was 54 years old, a retired school teacher from Billings, Montana. She had visited Yellowstone every summer for 11 consecutive years. She knew the park. Not as a wilderness traveler, she hiked modest maintained trails, walked the boardwalks, ate at the lodge cafeteria. She had a favorite bench near the Firehole River where she would sit for an hour every visit with a thermos of coffee and a paperback novel. Her daughter, Patricia Hollis Crane, who was interviewed for this account in 2021, described her mother as the least adventurous person I ever knew. She would not have gone off trail. She would not have done anything unexpected. She was a person who followed rules and took comfort in them. On August 7, 1978, Margaret Hollis parked her 1974 Ford Granada in the Upper Geyser Basin lot at approximately 9:15 a.m. She was seen by 3 independent witnesses, a German tourist couple who spoke to her briefly about Old Faithful's eruption schedule, and a ranger named Howard Messing, who checked her parking tag. Her car was still in the lot at 6:30 p.m. when the lot closed for evening. She was not in it. A standard search was initiated. Margaret Hollis's body was found 14 hours later at 11:45 p.m. by a night patrol ranger. She was located approximately 40 feet from the main boardwalk, close enough that she should have been visible to any of the thousands of visitors who had walked that boardwalk that day. She was seated. Her posture was described in the incident report as composed, upright, as if resting. Her thermos was in her lap. The novel was open on the bench beside her. She had been dead, according to the medical examiner's preliminary assessment, for between 6 and 10 hours. meaning she had died in the middle of the afternoon, in full daylight, in a location walked by an estimated 800 to 1,200 visitors that day. Cause of death, cardiac arrest, consistent with her known history of moderate heart disease. This, in isolation, would not be a hold file case. Elderly visitor, known cardiac condition, dies on a trail. Tragic, but explicable. What made it a hold file case, what Ranger Howard Messing noted in his internal report, and what was redacted from every public version of that report, was the thermos. It was closed, full, untouched. Margaret Hollis had been sitting in her favorite spot, apparently resting, with a full thermos of coffee she hadn't opened. Her daughter confirmed her mother had filled that thermos at the lodge that morning. She always did. She always drank it. The coffee would have been cold by mid-afternoon, but it would have been there. Something to do with her hands, something to anchor the rest. She wouldn't have sat there for hours without opening it, Patricia Hollis Crane said. That's the only thing I've never been able to explain, the coffee. She had 6 hours of daylight sitting on that bench, and she never opened the thermos. The report was filed. The case was closed. Cardiac event. Natural causes. Somewhere between filing and closing, it acquired a hold file designation that persisted in administrative records until at least 2003, when a subsequent FOIA request found a reference to it in a list of legacy cases. Designation hold, no further action. No ranger interviewed could explain, 25 years later, what no further action was meant to prevent. In September of 1989, a family of 4 from Provo, Utah, David and Sandra Thornton, and their 2 sons, Kyle age 12 and Aaron age 9, entered the backcountry on a permitted 4-day loop through the Shoshone Lake region. They were experienced family hikers. David Thornton had completed the loop twice before. They had proper permits, proper gear, bear canisters, a planned itinerary filed with the backcountry office. They did not complete the loop. On day 3, a solo hiker named Robert Vanek encountered David Thornton alone on the trail, approximately 6 miles from where the family's camp should have been. David Thornton was walking, word given in a signed statement, with purpose, like he knew exactly where he was going. He did not stop. He did not acknowledge Vanek beyond a brief nod. He was not carrying a pack. He was not wearing a hat, despite temperatures that had dropped to the upper 40s. He was carrying, in his right hand, a single trekking pole belonging to Aaron, a child's adjustable pole, orange handle, which Vanek noted because it looked incongruous with the adult man carrying it. Vanek, concerned but not alarmed, continued on his way. He reported the encounter the following day, when he exited the backcountry. By that time, Sandra Thornton and both boys had been found at the campsite, cold but unharmed. Extremely distressed, having spent 2 nights waiting for David to return from what he had told them would be a short walk to check the route ahead. The camp was intact. The food was still there. David's pack was still there. His journal was open on the tent floor. The last entry dated to that morning. A note about the weather. A note about Aaron's blister. A reminder to himself to check the bear hang before sleep. Normal, mundane. The writing of a man who planned to return. David Thornton was found 3 days later, 17 miles from the campsite, in a thermal area he had no reason to be anywhere near. He was physically unharmed. He had no memory of the 3 days. He remembered leaving the campsite to check the route, and then standing in the thermal area with a ranger speaking to him. Nothing in between. The medical evaluation found no evidence of carbon monoxide exposure, no evidence of head trauma, no evidence of any toxin or substance. David Thornton was by all physiological measures a healthy 41-year-old man who had experienced a 3-day fugue state and walked 17 miles through wilderness terrain he had never previously traveled in the wrong direction, carrying his 9-year-old's trekking pole. The case was designated hold file within 72 hours of David Thornton's recovery. The Thornton family was told, according to Sandra Thornton in a 2018 interview with a cold case researcher, that there was nothing medically concerning and they didn't need to worry. She was not told about the hold file designation. She found out about it in 2016 through a researcher's FOIA request. They knew something was wrong, Sandra Thornton said. The way the ranger spoke to us when David came back, he wasn't reassuring us. He was managing us. There's a difference, and I've had 30 years to feel that difference. David Thornton died of an unrelated illness in 2007. He never recovered the missing 3 days of memory. His family was told, formally and finally, that his case was closed as a medical episode, cause undetermined. The hold file designation remained on the case until the designation category was administratively dissolved in 2004. Whether the case was subsequently transferred to another category or simply closed is unclear. The records show only an absence, a gap in the file number sequence, where additional documentation should be. What makes a hold file case different from a simply unsolved case is not the absence of an explanation. It is the presence of a specific, documented decision not to explain, or more precisely, not to share the explanation that was developed internally. Rangers who worked the backcountry through the 1980s and 1990s describe a culture within the Yellowstone Division that handled these cases through a combination of institutional discipline and personal compartmentalization. You filed what you were told to file. You discussed it with no one outside the immediate incident team. And then, gradually, you stopped discussing it at all. The park has its own psychology, said a retired ranger who worked Yellowstone for 22 years before retiring in 2002. He asked to be called by his first name only, Warren. You spend enough time here, you start to think in its terms. The scale of it does something to you. You stop being surprised by things that should surprise you, and you start being, not frightened exactly, careful about what you look at directly, about what you report. Warren described an informal taxonomy that circulated among experienced rangers, passed in conversation, never written down. Not all unexplained events were equal. A visitor who got lost and was found unharmed, common. A visitor who got lost and was found harmed in ways consistent with terrain, common. A visitor who got lost and was found in a state or location that produced what Warren called the wrong kind of silence in the debrief room. That was something else. Something that moved toward hold status almost automatically, as if the institutional reflex to contain it had been pre-programmed. Between 1985 and 1998, Warren was aware of 7 cases that reached hold status. He participated directly in 4 of them. He would describe only 2 for this account. In the summer of 1991, a man was found by 2 backcountry rangers during a routine patrol of the Black Canyon of the Yellowstone area. He was sitting on a rock overlooking the Yellowstone River, approximately 4 miles from the nearest trailhead. He appeared to be in his mid-40s, in good physical condition, wearing appropriate hiking gear. He did not acknowledge the rangers when they approached. He did not respond to direct verbal address. He was not in physical distress. He was simply absent, present in body, absent in every way that mattered. The rangers radioed for assistance and waited. The man sat on the rock and looked at the river. His eyes tracked the water's movement. He was not catatonic. Catatonia presents differently. Rangers are trained in the difference. He was simply somewhere else. It took 45 minutes for additional personnel to arrive. During those 45 minutes, the rangers attempted conversation, checked for ID, looked for any medical alert identification. There was nothing. No wallet, no park permit, no car keys, no phone. Though in 1991, a missing phone was not the immediate red flag it would become. No identification of any kind. The man was transported to the Lake Hospital. He was evaluated by a physician. No physical injury was found. He did not speak during examination. He made no sound at all. He was transferred to a regional medical facility in Cody for psychiatric evaluation. Here the trail goes cold in a specific way. There is no record of him in the Lake Hospital admissions log for that date. The date Warren is certain of, July 14th, 1991. He was present for the transport. He watched the man be loaded into the vehicle. He submitted his incident report. Warren was told 2 days later that the report had been subsumed into a federal medical privacy matter and that he should not discuss the case with anyone. When he asked for a case number, he was given one. When he checked that case number 3 weeks later, the sequence was listed as administrative hold, federal coordination. He never saw another document related to the case. He does not know the man's name. He does not know what happened to him. He does not know where the man came from, how he arrived in a remote area with no identification, how long he had been there before the rangers found him, or where he went afterward. "I think about him sometimes," Warren said, "not as a mystery, more like, I wonder if he ever came back." if whoever he was came back into him eventually, or if he's still sitting on that rock somewhere in his mind, looking at water. This case is the one Warren was most reluctant to describe. In October of 1994, a maintenance crew performing end-of-season trail clearing work in the Lamar Valley discovered, arranged in a line on a flat rock beside the trail, 7 pairs of children's shoes, different sizes, different styles, sneakers, 1 pair of small hiking boots, 1 pair of what appeared to be Mary Jane dress shoes, all in good condition, all clearly worn, not new, not discarded, used. There had been no incident reports involving children in the Lamar Valley that season. There had been no reports of missing children. No family had reported lost property. The shoes were logged, photographed, and sent to the lost and found. A check was run against missing persons reports for minors in a 5-state region. No matches. The lead maintenance worker, a seasonal employee named Dale Hutchins, mentioned the discovery to a permanent ranger named Caroline Beyer. Beyer was sufficiently disturbed by the arrangement to file an unusual incident report. Not the presence of the shoes. Lost property was common. The arrangement. 7 pairs, spaced evenly, all facing the same direction, facing the valley, as if the children who had worn them had taken them off together, set them down in order, and walked on barefoot. The unusual incident report was removed from Beyer's file within a week. She was told it was not a ranger incident and should not have been filed in that category. She was not told what category it had been filed in instead. The shoes themselves, when Hutchins followed up on their status 3 weeks later, had no record in the lost and found system. They were simply gone. Warren heard about this case from Caroline Beyer herself in a conversation in the employee break room at Mammoth Hot Springs, sometime in the winter of 1995. He remembered it the way you remember things that press against the limits of what you're prepared to hold. Clearly, uncomfortably, permanently. She wasn't scared, Warren said. That was the thing. She'd been a ranger for 12 years. She wasn't scared. She was, I want to say, offended. Like the park had done something rude. Like it had shown her something it shouldn't have. And she was expected to pretend she hadn't seen it. Not all hold file cases originated with visitors. Some of them involved rangers. In the summer of 1997, a backcountry patrol ranger named Thomas Aldridge was assigned a solo patrol of the Thorofare corridor, standard practice for experienced rangers. A 4-day rotation through the most remote section of the park. Aldridge was 38, 12 years in the service, considered one of the most capable backcountry rangers in the division. His supervisor, interviewed for this account on condition of anonymity, described him as the person you sent into difficult situations because nothing rattled him. If Thomas said something was wrong, something was wrong. Aldridge completed his patrol and returned to the ranger station on schedule. His patrol log was routine for the first 3 days. On day 4, the final day of the rotation, the log changed. The following is drawn from a partial copy of that log obtained through FOIA, with redactions noted. Day 4, 0600, broke camp at Bridger Lake. Weather clear, wind from the northwest. Day 4, 0830, redacted, 3 lines. Day 4, 1100, reached, redacted waypoint. Encountered, redacted. Attempted, redacted per protocol. No response. Day 4, 1245, redacted, 7 lines. Day 4, 1400, return to redacted. Area was redacted. I could not redacted. Day 4, 1600, continuing toward exit. Redacted was still visible from the ridge. I did not go back. Day 4, 1800, reached trailhead. Reporting immediately. What Aldridge reported immediately upon reaching the trailhead is not in any document accessible through FOIA. What is documented is that within 36 hours, a 4-ranger team was sent into the Thorofare on an emergency dispatch. They returned after 2 days. Their collective report was filed directly with the park superintendent. It was designated hold file immediately. It has not been released in whole or in part in any FOIA response to date. Thomas Aldridge took medical leave the week after his return. He did not return to backcountry patrol. He transferred to a visitor services desk role at Old Faithful the following season and submitted his resignation 8 months later. He moved to Oregon. He did not speak publicly about the Thorofare until 2019, when a researcher named Andrea Castillo reached him by phone. He would say only one thing on the record: Castillo published it in a 2020 independent podcast episode that has since been removed from all major platforms. A transcript survives. There are things in that park that the park knows about and has decided the public doesn't need to know about. I'm not telling you they're supernatural. I'm not telling you they're human. I'm telling you they exist. And the people whose job it is to keep you safe have made a decision that keeping you safe includes not telling you what they are. I respected that decision for 20 years. I'm 60 now. I'm tired of respecting it. The podcast episode was removed within 3 weeks of publication. The hosting platform cited content policy violations without further specification. Andrea Castillo has not been reachable since 2021. The transcript circulates on a small number of independent websites. Nina Vasquez was 26 years old, a graduate student in environmental science from the University of New Mexico. She was conducting independent research on thermal vent microbiology, a project unaffiliated with any official Yellowstone research program, which meant she was in the park as a regular visitor with a backcountry permit, not under the supervision of the park's science division. She entered the backcountry on June 3, 2019, on a permitted solo 3-day trip in the Pelican Valley region. She had checked in with the backcountry office. She had the correct permits. She had a satellite communicator, a Garmin InReach, registered to her device number in the park's visitor safety system. On June 5th, the satellite communicator sent a single automated alert, not an SOS, but a motion absent alert, indicating the device had not moved in more than 12 hours. This triggered a welfare check. A ranger team was dispatched. They found Nina Vasquez's campsite intact, her tent standing, her equipment properly stored. Her satellite communicator was on the tent floor, powered on, showing the 12 hours stationary alert. Her research notebook was open on her sleeping bag. The last entry in the notebook was dated June 4th, late afternoon. It was not a research entry. It was a note written in Nina's handwriting that read, "The pool by the East Ridge. It's not what it looks like from the map. There's something in the thermal signature that doesn't match the geological survey. I need to report this. I need to tell someone this is not what the survey says it is." Below that, a single additional line, written in a slightly different pressure, as if written at a different time or in a different state. It's aware. Nina Vasquez was found 48 hours later, 3 miles from her campsite in good physical health. She had no memory of the intervening period. She did not know what she had meant by the final line in her notebook. She did not know how she had traveled 3 miles without her equipment. She cooperated fully with the ranger investigation, answered every question, submitted to a medical evaluation that found nothing abnormal. Her case was designated hold file within the week. She was informed of this, unusually, in a departure from standard hold file protocol, by the ranger supervisor who had led the welfare check. He told her, according to Nina in a recorded interview conducted in 2022, that there are some cases the park keeps separate for reasons that aren't always clear even to us. Your case is one of them. I'm telling you this because you're a scientist and I think you deserve to know. Nina Vasquez completed her graduate degree. She published her microbiology research. She has not returned to Yellowstone. When asked about the final line in her notebook, "It's aware," she pauses for a long time before answering. "I don't know what I meant," she says, "but I know I meant it." The hold file designation, according to former administrative staff interviewed for this account, was never formally created. There is no founding document, no policy memo, no administrative rule that established it. It developed organically. The phrase first appearing in internal communications in the early 1970s, used informally by rangers to describe cases that didn't fit the usual processing. By the late 1980s, it had acquired something approaching official status, without ever being officially codified. Cases were assigned the designation by verbal instruction from supervisors. The designation appeared in file number sequences as a parenthetical, HF, that was not defined in any key or glossary. When the FOIA researcher Brian Coulter compiled a comprehensive analysis of Yellowstone incident records in 2017, he found 94 file numbers in the sequence that bore the HF notation. Of those 94, full records were available for 31. Partial records, records with significant redactions, were available for 28. The remaining 35 were accessible only as file numbers with the notation Record Archived, Access Restricted, Federal Land Management Administrative Hold. 35 cases, sealed. not destroyed, sealed. The distinction matters. Destroyed records cannot be FOIA'd. Sealed records create a legal obligation. They exist, they are held, and the agency holding them must confirm their existence even if they decline to release them. The Park Service, through its legal office, has confirmed the existence of the 35 sealed files. It has declined in every FOIA appeal to date to release them on grounds of ongoing federal coordination, a designation that can be applied indefinitely without a defined endpoint. Ongoing federal coordination means another agency is involved. It does not specify which agency. It does not specify the nature of the coordination. It is, in administrative law terms, a door that can be kept closed without anyone having to say what is behind it. What is behind it? The honest answer, the only intellectually defensible answer, is that we don't know. What we can say is what it isn't. It isn't a simple record-keeping inefficiency. Too many files over too long a period, maintained too consistently, to be explained by bureaucratic sloppiness. It isn't straightforward legal liability protection. The cases that can be reviewed don't reveal patterns of negligence that would justify decades of suppression. It isn't ordinary wilderness tragedy. The cases that are known, the ones reconstructed here, share features that don't map onto ordinary wilderness tragedy. What they share is this: the absence of transition. People appear and disappear without the expected intermediate states. No tracks leading away, no signs of struggle, no plausible route from point A to point B. A man walks 17 miles through wilderness he has never traveled in a fugue state and arrives unharmed at a thermal area with his child's trekking pole. A woman writes a scientific observation and then writes a 2-word sentence that she cannot explain. And then she is gone for 48 hours and she is fine. An experienced ranger logs something in the Thorofare on his last day of patrol, and redactions erase whatever it was, but the weight of what remains is enough to end a career. The absence of transition is the signature. Things do not arrive in Yellowstone the way they arrive in other places. Things do not leave the way they leave in other places. The boundary between being there and not being there is, in certain parts of the park, under certain conditions, thinner than it should be. That is the most precise language available for something that resists precision. This is a question that has to be asked carefully, because what rangers believe professionally and what rangers believe personally are often different things, and both are different from what they will say on the record. What rangers believe professionally, institutionally, and on the record: Yellowstone is a complex wilderness environment with significant natural hazards, and disappearances occur for explicable reasons: terrain, weather, wildlife, medical events that are sometimes complicated by the park's scale and the difficulty of search operations. What rangers believe personally, in the break rooms and the long silences after difficult cases, is harder to summarize. Warren described it this way: after enough years, you develop a relationship with the park that isn't really about managing it anymore. The park doesn't need managing. It's been here for 600,000 years. It'll be here when we're gone. You start to think of yourself less as an authority and more as a guest, someone who has been granted access. And like any good guest, you observe certain limits. The limits Warren described were not formal policies. They were unwritten, passed between rangers the way the hold file designation itself was passed, verbally, informally, with the understanding that the people receiving them would know what to do with them. Don't patrol alone in the thermal basins after dark. Don't linger at certain waypoints in the Thorofare after the equinox. Don't enter the Pelican Valley in fog without a partner, no matter how experienced you are. Don't ignore the feeling. And Warren was precise about this. The feeling specifically that something in the landscape has shifted its attention to you. It's not malevolent, Warren said. I want to be clear about that. Nothing I ever saw or felt in that park was malevolent. It was interested the way the park itself is interested. Impersonally, from an enormous distance, without any particular concern for what you want or feel. It noticed us the way the geology notices us, as something small and temporary, passing through. One other ranger, a woman named Patricia, who worked Yellowstone for 16 years before transferring to a desk position in Washington, described the hold file cases in different terms. The park produces events that the institutional framework can't accommodate, she said. The hold file is just the institution's way of saying, this happened, we don't have a category for it. We're going to keep it here until we do. The problem is, we've never developed the category. We've been keeping things there for 50 years without developing the category. In the filing systems accessed through FOIA, there is a file number that appears only once in a list of hold file cases compiled by an unidentified administrative staffer sometime in the mid-1990s. The number is in sequence with the others, which suggests it was assigned through the same system, in the same period. But unlike the other numbers, it has no accompanying notation. Not HF, not archived, access restricted, not federal coordination, just the number, alone, at the end of a typewritten list. Brian Coulter noticed it when he was analyzing the documents. He requested the file specifically. The response came 6 weeks later. No record found matching this file number. Not record archived, access restricted, not ongoing federal coordination. No record found. A file number with no record. Assigned through the normal system. Appearing on a list of cases that absolutely, demonstrably existed. And then, nothing. Coulter described this in his published analysis as the most unsettling data point in the entire corpus. Not because of what it implies about what happened, but because of what it implies about how thoroughly something can be removed when the decision is made to remove it. The wind is still moving through Yellowstone tonight, across the geothermal basins, through the lodgepole corridors, down the Black River valleys. 3 million people will visit this year. Most of them will see the geysers and the bison and the mountains, and they will feel, as millions before them have felt, that they are standing in something ancient and extraordinary and fundamentally safe, contained by its beauty, organized by its grandeur, and almost all of them will be right, almost. What the park holds, beyond its thermal energy and its wildlife and its geological improbability, is a category of event that has no public name and no official acknowledgement and no place in any interpretive display at any visitor center. It holds it the way deep basalt holds heat from an ancient eruption, slowly and at enormous pressure and with no indication from the surface of what moves below. The 63 reported disappearances are documented. The families have been notified. The paperwork has been filed. And somewhere in the space between the filed and the sealed, between the reported and the held, between the 63 cases you can find and the 35 you cannot, there is a number that exists only as a sequence position on a typed list. The 72nd case, which has no record and no explanation and no name. It was there. The number says it was there. And then it wasn't. Like everything else that has ever truly disappeared at Yellowstone, it left behind only the shape of its absence, the place where something was, and the silence that fills it now.
Yellowstone has always been a place of incredible beauty, but perhaps also a place that still keeps some of its secrets hidden. What do you think about these mysterious hold file cases? Were they simply unexplained wilderness incidents, or is there something more behind them? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and join us for more mysteries, disappearances, and unsolved cases. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious.